Alright, so like I mentioned out, I'm going to be using Fusion Studio, but you can also use Resolve. I'm going to be on the Fusion 17 beta version, on the Studio version. So Fusion Studio is a paid version. If you want to follow along and you don't have Fusion Studio, you can use the one built in Resolve. I typically don't use that myself for compositing. I think it'll become clear once we get into that. I'll show you how to configure everything initially for both Studio and for Resolve, and after that I'll be using Fusion Studio, but everything should be basically the same aside from some of the things that I'm going to be pointing out in the beginning. So yeah, here we have Fusion Studio, and then we have Resolve here. You can see it's somewhat the same. So you have the Fusion tab down here, and then we have just the work area, and it's really annoying here. In order to record this, I need to put my window scaling up to 200%, else it's too small. But normally you have quite a lot more working area, but it'll have to do for this tutorial. So there's a couple of main differences. Let me just move this outside. Let me just move grab one of my renders here. Just grab my profile, space scene, render. Right. Here we have I have my render that I have, and if I just drag it in here in Fusion, you can see it comes in. I can drag it here on the top, and you can see the colors will be all wonky. That's because it's not set up for OpencolorIO yet. And by the way, if I do the same here in Fusion, you will see it will be slightly different, which is one of the reasons why I prefer Fusion. If I'm doing it here in Resolve, it's going to be slightly different. So if I drag it in here, it's going to think. And you can see I get media in and media out. And what it's going to do here, it's loading it in with the bin, and it's bringing it in as a media in, referencing from the bin, and it's putting it in a media out. You can also just load it in directly, like we have here. So this is a loader. So I can also just, if I press Control Space, I can also just make a loader here, and I can put my test frame, and you can see then I can grab it regularly, and then I can put it in my media out, and it's the same. But by default, if you drag something from your Explorer or your Finder or whatever platform you're on, it'll bring it in as a media in, which has a couple of downsides. Also, guys, I guess it has some upsides. But let's first just go over some of the additional stuff that we need to configure in order to make some of this stuff work. Let's first go over this OpencolorIO thing. So if we're in Fusion Studio, you have this thing here. LUT, you can enable it. So you need to go to OpencolorIO color view space LUT. So if you did the environment variable, the Windows global thing by default, it should pick up on it. If you don't, you need to point it here to your config. You can put it from ACCG, and we can put it to output Rec 709 or SRGB. Right, and you can see now the colors will be properly configured. So over here you have the same thing. So you can just do that thing. It's also, it has this thing. It's a little bit different. What you can also do let me just go to edit. Oh, 1 second. I need to put it to OCIO, edit, right, and you can go to ACCG, and then output Rec 709, boop, there we go. So you can see now the colors are also fine. So there's another thing in the DaVinci Resolve here, we can set it sort of globally. I think it's under preferences, and then under, let me just quick, I generally don't really use Resolve that much. Maybe it's under, where was it again? Projects. Oh, I think it was under project settings. And you have color management, and then you can put it to ACES, ACES 1.03, and then I think output Rec 709. I think this does it globally. So, but again, like I'm not a Resolve expert, so it could be that that part was messed up. But you can also just do it here with the view transform if all you're gonna do is just do the fusion thing here. So that's the difference there. So anyway, but now we're looking at true ACES CG. So if you're gonna be bringing in other footage, we also need to do some additional stuff. I'll get into that in a bit. So a couple of more things that we need to do. We need to configure something called Fusion Reactor, which is a plugin management thing. So if you Google Stake Underwater Fusion Reactor, or just go to stakeunderwater.com, you can get to this thing. And you come over here, and then we need to find the download button. Where's the download button? Always, there we go. Download Reactor, blah, blah, blah. And you can download this thing, Reactor installer. So you can just do that thing. Then you need to grab the file that you downloaded. So you can go to download and you grab that Lua file. You just drag it in. It's going to give you a pop-up. You can see ready to install. And I'm going to cancel that because I already have it installed. In Resolve here, it's the same. So you just get the thing, you install it. You need to reboot Fusion or Resolve. And then you get this pop-up thing. So in Fusion Studio, it's going to be under Reactor and then Open Reactor. So there's a tab over here, and it's going to open this pop-up menu. And then Resolve, it's going to be under Workspace, Scripts, Reactor, Open Reactor. And it's going to pop in here. And so essentially this is a manager for sort of a lot of free plugins. So there's a lot of community people who make super cool free tools. So you can install those, and there's a couple that we're going to need anyway, but there's a whole host of stuff that you can download there. But initially what we want is that we definitely want is HOS split EXR. So this one, so HOS stands for House of Secrets, split EXR. House of Secrets is a Dutch studio as well. I know these guys, they're awesome guys. So you need to install that, and that is very important because that's used to split out these AOVs. You can also do it manually, but it's a lot of work. So that's what we're gonna use. And if you have it here, it's gonna be the same. So if you just type in here, you can see hot split EXR. Anyway, so that's one of the differences here. So if you install that, so let me just go to the pop-up thing again. So Open Reactor. So just install it. There's an update thing. I guess I could update it. Yes. All right. So if I now grab my test frame in here, and let's drag it in here, and let's enable my OpencolorIO thing again. Because when I put the script in, it made a new scene, which I don't want to do. And then output 709. Yeah, so if you then go to script, you can see there's here a hot split EXR Ultra. So if we check that thing, so what it will do, it will split out. This is a loader, and it will split out all of our AOVs into individual. I need to probably need to 1 second. I need to update. Need to restart Fusion because I just clicked the update button. So 1 second. Right, so I'm back. By the way, make sure to also save your scene before we get started. You can just go to File, Save As, and just save it somewhere. So if you have any crash in between, then you don't lose your progress. So anyways, I'm just gonna plug this thing in here and like that. And now I'm gonna do the script, split EXR, press OK. And now you can see it splits it out to all of the AOVs that we made. So whole bunch, well, almost all. The Z1 never gets extracted out, but apart from that, they all get extracted out. You can also do that stuff manually. So by the way, if I go through this, like if I can just drag these in, you can see it extracts out all of these elements that we have. So reflection, refraction, all of that stuff. Background AOV, I'm not sure if I showed that in the 3D render, but you can also, like, that will save out the background. So that's the sky background here. You can also do that stuff manually. So if I just grab my loader, if I go to format, channels, you can see, I can see all my channels here. And then you can, for example, let's say I want to get my diffuse. I could go diffuse R, diffuse G, and diffuse B. And I have to diffuse as well. You can see the script will just make it a lot easier. So here's where difference comes in with the resolve. So with resolve, I cannot do this on my so if I, like I mentioned, if I bring a render in like this, it comes in as a media in. And if I do a script here, so if I do the split XR, it does work. So it only works on a loader. So if I do it on a loader here, I need to replace the render, so that's why it's not working. Let's do a loader, sorry, loader. So workspace, script, split XR, and you can see now it does work. So that's kind of, I don't like from Resolve that you cannot just drag stuff easily from your file. You always have to do it with the loader thing. I mean, at least if you want to split them out like this, it would be ideal if they would make some kind of a shuffle node like Nuke had, where you can just like shuffle channels out. Anyway, so just keep in mind. So that's the main differences for now that I'm just gonna need to discuss. So aside from that, everything will be mostly the same in Resolve or in Studio. But for now on, I'm going to be using Studio, so Fusion Standalone Studio. So I won't be jumping back to Resolve. But if you're going to use Resolve, it's going to be basically the same. So just keep it in mind. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about using these AOVs to sort of rebuild our beauty. So this is our beauty render that we had. So this thing. And what you generally do is when you do a composite like this, you generally don't composite on your beauty. Sometimes you might, but in a lot of cases you will rebuild your beauty from your AOVs. And I'm gonna show you how that works, and I'm gonna sort of explain why that's actually useful. So in order to rebuild our beauty, we need all of these AOVs that we split out. So let's grab one. Let's grab our diffuse, and then you can select it, and then press Control Space on your keyboard. So Control Space, and then you get this pop-up icon, which allows you to add a tool. By the way, to add a tool, you can also right-click, Add Tool, and you can get this whole thing. And you can just look through all of the tools that are there. In order to do that, oh, by the way, one more thing before we get started. I want to install one more plugin before else I need to get back to that. Might make more sense to do it now. If you type Redshift in here, install all of the Redshift tools here. So Redshift Utilities and Camera Extractor, because we will also be using those later. Anyway, so with this diffuse here, so select it and then Control Space and then type Boolean and then do channel Booleans. So this is different from something like Nuke. In Nuke you just have a merge node. In Fusion there's a difference between the merge and a Boolean. Boolean will be to add channels together, and merge will be just to put something on top, like an image on top of another image. So I'm gonna have the diffuse there. And by the way, let's split our fuse. So we can press the button here, boop, and go to fuse. And let's drag the channel booleans in the right input. So now on the first input, and we also need to configure our OpencolorIO there separately. And this will save, by the way, into the file, so you don't need to do this every time. But output work 709. Right. So we have two viewers to sort of look at. And let's grab another path. So let's grab specular. It doesn't matter the order that you're doing this in, by the way, but let's grab specular, put it into the second input channel booleans, and let's select channel booleans here and put it to add. So it's going to add the specular onto the other thing. And with alpha, we can just do nothing. We don't want to do anything with the alpha. So you can see now it added the specular that we have here onto the diffuse. And let's just keep doing that. So let's copy and paste the channel booleans that we have, connect it up. By the way, you can drag it in and it will automatically put it into one input. You can also do is if you right click on it and drag it and let it go, you can say what input do we want to put it in. So in this case, just background. All right, so let's grab some other stuff here. We have our refraction, so let's also add our refraction in. And you can see we get it over there. And also, by the way, maybe already good to sort of start organizing some stuff. So let's right click here in our view and let's go to Arrange tool, Arrange to Grid. So we can snap these to the grid. Like that. Right, and let's do some more. So let's also grab that one. Let's paste that in, put a GI in here. Drag it in there so you can see small difference, but it's the GI, so the bound light. Let's grab reflection. Right, reflection. See, the box still looks very black. That's because we don't have the subsurface scattering. So we can just put it like that. Put the subsurface scattering in. And then we have all of the basic stuff aside from the background, of course, because we don't have the background here yet. So let's just also, we can just channel boolean that in. We're gonna swap out the background later, but I wanted to just have this sort of to kind of show you the thing. So yeah, now we have our entire beauty render back. So let me just grab the render again. So if I just put this in here, so you can see if I just drag this in here, and why is this looking a little bit different? That's because we have the we put the background in here as an add, which you probably don't want to do. So let's just have a look at the, oh wait, we were adding the beauty on there. We don't want to add background, like let's put the background in foreground. Right. So I accidentally put the beauty on top of the thing, so it was sort of adding the original beauty to the thing. So anyway, so you can see now we have the original render that we had, but we remade it. And now you might ask, but Tim, like, what's the point? Like, we just did a lot of work. We spent 5 minutes rebuilding something that we already had. Well, the thing is, because we now have this split up, we can start doing changes to each individual element. For example, what we could do is we could, let's say, okay, maybe specular here. Maybe maybe I want a little bit more specular. So what I could do is say I put, so I select it, I control space, and I put brightness contrast, get a brightness contrast, and I could say I can put a gain. So I can control the specular. So I can turn it down, I can turn it up. I can say, right, I have this subsurface scattering here, but let's do color correction. So just select it, control space, color correction, and I can say, all right, maybe let's just change it. So now you can see I'm changing the box here. And you now have all this control over, essentially just over like all of your individual elements. So you can do this on all of the things. And I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be on these individual, like I can, for example, I can go in here and I can say, let's select the channel boolean here that merges in the reflection. I can go to settings and you see I have a blend, and I can see I can fade out the reflection. But maybe, let's say that I don't want to do that. Maybe I only want to do it on this thing. So I cannot really just do it on the global thing, right? Well, that's, for example, where these masks, these puzzle mats come in. So let's check. Oh, here we have the puzzle mat with the blue. So let's grab that to move the reflection here up. And let's do a color correct. And what we can do is we can right click on this output here and then drag it over here and then put it in the effect mask. So that will allow us to use something as a second input on the mask of the color of that thing. So let's go to color corrector settings, go to put it to blue because we want to use the blue color because we want to do it on this one. And then So now it's using the blue color over here to mask this color corrector effect. So you can see if I now do this, you can see it's only working on that thing over there. So if I gain this down, you can see the reflection gets turned down on only that thing. I can turn it off. You can see I have this individual control over these elements. So that's pretty cool, right? And there's a whole host of other stuff that we can also do. So let's just like explore some of this stuff a little bit. So maybe I don't like this background here. Like we rendered that in, let's say the 3D artist, or in this case us, but made a mistake and accidentally rendered, because normally you wouldn't render this background in like this. So let's remove it, right? So let's just have a look at, like, we have this this thing here where we don't have any. So let's grab our puzzle mat. So probably what we want to do is want to introduce some alpha. So we want to sort of recreate maybe a mat from our puzzle mats in order to sort of remove maybe this background. So I guess a couple of ways that we could do this. We could do, let's just let me just think what would be good. Let's make a background. Just make it white like this. Let's put it to solid color white. We have a white color, and let's say channel booleans. And let's grab these puzzle mats that we had. Let's say, all right, I want to put it in there. So that thing, let's go, let's say multiply by mask. And, oh, I need to put the puzzle mat in the mask, by the way. So do effect mask. And I need to put it to, let's say, red. So you can see now we extract that thing. We can do another one. Let's say, which color do we want? Okay, we also want to do the green one. So let's do effect mask. Go to this thing, do green. Oh, yeah, sorry, we need to, of course, do it like this and then do it like this. So we effect mask, right? Then we mask that one out. Because we didn't have the alpha channel, so we kind of need to recreate our alpha channel, right? So what we can do is put, for example, that one in, put this in here. And okay, we had green, let's do the blue one. Blue. Rip. And then we need our other puzzle mat. So we had another puzzle mat here. That one had our red. So let's also do that one, background. Right click. Effect mask. So you can see now we also get that one. Now we have all of these things, and that's where now you can put a merge. We're gonna merge all of these things together. Merge. So let's merge this thing, merge this thing. So another merge. This thing. Whoop. You can see now we have a white thing here, so you can see merging stuff together. And now we could do is we can say, all right, instead of having this background here, let's grab this channel booleans. Let's just do copy, so don't do anything, and let's drag our thing that we have here over on this thing, put it to effect mask, go to settings, and let's multiply by luminance, multiply by mask, boom. Now we have our alpha. And you can see, well, we have a ton of nodes here, which just doesn't look that great. So we can select those and then press Ctrl G, and you can see we get a group. You can also double click on it and you open the group again. And let's just call this mat or something like that. All right, so now we can see we introduced our alpha. So we fixed the issue. Like now in this case, I baked the background in on purpose, but like this could also be a thing where like, oh, there's a mistake like that in your render. And then, well, like, how do we fix it? Well, let me just very simply, we just use these mats we created to sort of create an alpha channel here. So now we can see we have an alpha channel. So let's just go back to this thing. So now let's say we wanna, by the way, let's do nothing. Yeah, something like that. So let's grab let's go to our, my folder here. Let's go up a level. Amazing. So let's say I want to put another background. So I have an image here, of the sky. So image of a sky, and the colors look a little bit, probably look a little bit different here than they do here. Actually, they look better here, even though this is not the way they're supposed to look. Maybe I should grab another image. But in order to make this look the way it should, so this is this is the SRGB version. We should, like, in order to merge this behind, because what we want to do is we want to merge it behind. So we just put merge. So this is where merge, for example, comes in. Put this thing here and drag this in. Boom. And we need to crop this, by the way. Crop. I'm gonna crop it to 1920 by 1080. You can see now we put this sky behind our thing. First, let's fix these colors, because remember we're working in ACES, so we need to account for that. So we need to first put this thing. We need to put it into ACES color space. So in this case, actually, this kind of, I guess, if I look at it like this, looks better. But maybe I can find another image that I have somewhere where the colors will look significantly worse. Let's say I have this one. Oh, I just grab it, put it into my Right, there we go. Right, so if I just open this one, you can see colors here look messed up. So maybe let's just merge that one in instead. So that's because these are sRGB and we're working in ACES color space. So let's account for that. So what we need to do is type OCIO, OpenColor transform, and put it, and then say input space. So source space, what is the input space? Well, the input space is going to be output sRGB, and then source space is going to be and then output space is going to be ACG. All right, so let's have a look. That's actually, there we go. You can see now colors look the same as it was over there, right? Here let me just. So the only difference here is that the white here looks a little bit washed out compared to the original. So that's mainly because we're loading this in as 8-bit integer, and again, you don't want it. You want to go to, where is it? Go to your image, depth, and just put it to something like float 16. So you can see now it looks fine. So again, like, that's what I meant before with like integers and floats. You want to keep this floating. So here we have it now as a nice floating color and in ACES CG. And then we're cropping it here, and let's just put a transform before that, so we can transform our image. So just put it like that. All right. So we can, over here, if we check this thing, we can move it. So let's go over here and then let's just scale it down. And let's just put it like this. So again, we're transforming it and then we're cropping it to the correct size. So now we have our very beautiful background in it. Voila, magnifique. All right. So yeah, that's our that's a thing that we did. So there's a lot more stuff, of course, that we can do. Let's say something typical that you would do, for example, adding depth of field in your composite. So depth of field is generally very slow to render, but it's and it's something you generally will add in compositing. You can also add something like motion blur, for example, in compositing. You generally do either motion blur or depth of field. Generally not both. You can do both, but it's very complicated because you have to. If you do both, then you need to, for each of your AOVs, add the motion blur and then do it on all of the other ones, and just pick one. So let's add some depth of field. In order to do that, we need to, and by the way, the depth of field tools in Fusion to do depth blur is not that great. I use a plugin for it. If you have Fusion, you need Fusion Studio. Well, I guess now Fusion, I'm not sure if the plugin also works in the free version of Resolve. It should work on the paid one. I'm not sure if the free one supports OpenFX. But what you need to do is Friesluft Lensker. We go to Friesluft. You can download the demo as well. So you don't necessarily need this, but if you're going to be serious about compositing, doing a lot of that stuff, I recommend you buy this plugin. It's just a lot better plugin to the depth of field. It just looks way better than what we're going to get in Fusion itself, because the depth of field stuff there just isn't that great. So just keep that in mind. So you will see the difference when you start doing that. So you can just download here the if you're on Studio, you can download the demo and then try it out. But let's say we want to add some depth of field here. So in order to do that, we need to actually split out our depth ourselves, because again, for some reason the Z depth never gets split out when we do these renders. I think maybe because of the naming conventions that Redshift uses. Maybe if we were to name it differently here, maybe if we were to name it depth, I'm not sure. But we're gonna go to just grab our thing, just put everything to Z. You can see we get our depth map here. We could do a brightness contrast, for example. And you can see you can drag on this to sort of get your depth map. And again, this is just a black and white image of how far away is something. Try to get this like on here, down in the bottom. You can see your values. So roughly try to get it between like nothing like too extreme. Like don't have your values be like 1000 in the background and 0 in the foreground. Like try to keep it as close to 0 and 1 as possible. It doesn't necessarily matter that much, but I guess now it's between 0 and you can see some stuff can also be negative. That's what I mean with this floating stuff. So I guess something like this. So between 0 and 4.4 should be pretty fine. All right, so now we can, for example, do something like a depth blur. Depth blur. So in this depth blur, we can add our thing in, and then we need to set our Z-scale, and the Z-scale here is set up quite high, so that's again not what we want. We want to use 4.4 because again that's what we were using here. So you can see there's values. So depth blur, blur channel should be oh, by the way, shouldn't do it like that. We need to do is I generally don't use the depth blur, so that's why I'm messing up. What we need to do is go to channel booleans. And what we want to do is we want to put this in the second input here, and then just say do nothing, and do nothing. So we won't want to do any of that. What we want to do is we want to add these values to the depth channel. So if you go to auxiliary channels, if you go to channel boolean auxiliary channels, and then you can enable auxiliary channels and then say, all right, this is going to be your foreground. So we're going to grab the luminance, so the lightness from the foreground. So then this is going to add the luminance, so these black and white values to the depth channel. So that's going to be, so if I now check, we have Z here, and you can see we're adding Z, and if these values, by the way, are not what I expect them to be, so let me just put them to add, see if that's interesting. Kind of expected them to just be the same as they were with the colors here. Are we? Oh wait, we were we were looking at the wrong thing. Right, so let's just look at the actual proper thing. Right, so you can see now here, background here is like the Z channel here is the same as our colors that we have here. So we can see we added those in based on what we have here. Right. So now you just click on this thing again. We're back to our colors. Now we can go to our depth blur. Whoop, plug it in, and Z scale should be fine. Just increase the blur size. You can see now we add some depth of field, and we can see we can say, okay, where do we want to focus? Let's focus on the background. Focus on this thing. And there's different blurring methods, but you can see the depth of field doesn't really look that great with this default depth blur. It just doesn't look. It's just a default sort of box blur kind of thing. It just doesn't look great. I guess it's fine for like some stuff, but like I don't really like it. So that's why I tend to just use my own, not my own, but why I tend to use the Frischluft thing. There's also other ways to sort of do this depth blur thing. You also have something that I used to use a lot before was Vari blur. So Vari blur here can use a defocus blur, which looks a lot nicer, and that will allow you to take, for example, a second input, and then you can put it to Luma. And then you can see that already looks a lot better. We have a quality slider, and then by playing around with the brightness contrast here, you can see we can sort of change the focus. You will still get these edges here, but it's just not that ideal. So anyway, I just wanted to show that it's also possible to do some of that stuff by default. But if we now look at Frischluft depth of field, Frischluft, you will immediately see that it's going to look a lot better. So that's why if you're going to do any proper compositing, probably just get this. It's going to save you a lot of headaches, a lot of time. It just looks a lot better. So what it will take is you will plug your beauty in, and then in the second input we put our brightness contrast thing that we have here, and we can go to our Frischluft, and we need to in-depth invert because Redshift depth passes are inverted. Like some render engines make them black-white, some make them white-black. So like in some render engines this will be black and then the other side will be white. In Redshift it's inverted. So let's just look at our depth blur here. So let's turn on depth invert and let's put auto range. So auto range is going to remap these black and white values that we have over here into the range to work with. So you can see it does the minimum and the maximum. Super simple. You can put it in there. And then we can put the focus somewhere and increase the radius. And you can see this already looks a lot better. So you can change focus here. Let me just maybe make this a little bit more extreme. Let's say we do something like this. Okay, I wanna get more. I'm gonna try to get more depth in my actual objects as well. So that's why I'm doing this. So you can see we have some gradation there, and again, this thing changed the outer range again. Now we should be able to also get some nice depth blur on our actual object. So now you can see we get like also this object is now blurred, this is in focus. You can see we can change focus here. And this can be animated. Like for example, I can change the focal distance here. You can right click on the channel, put animate, and then you can go to another frame and move it over there. Did I? So static. Oh wait, I was dragging the wrong thing. Right, so you see I can animate this thing. It will set some keys. You can see I can change, I can key the focus, stuff like that. So you can see it's like super cool. In order, like you can just add stuff like depth of field like this in compositing, which is just well, I mean, if you're gonna render this in 3D, it's gonna take a lot of time. You're gonna need a lot of samples. If you're just gonna do this in compositing, it's gonna be, well, a lot faster. So this is just something that you will almost always do in compositing, except for some, like I know in my Houdini 101 I rendered it into the render. That was because the seaweed, it wasn't looking that great with the depth pass, but it'll depend on the on whatever you're doing. Right, so it's pretty cool. Let's explore some other techniques that we can also do. Like maybe we can do some relighting. We can like put some objects in between these objects. There's a whole host of techniques that we can do. So yeah, let's explore some more techniques. Right, so let's just move this stuff out of the way for now. We're gonna do this depth blur later, but for now, I just want to move it out of the way. So let's just explore some more techniques that you could do with compositing. Because the main point I just want to drive home with this chapter is just like show you the basics, but also like the possibilities of stuff that you can do with compositing. Just how powerful it can sort of be, just within this simple exploration scene. Let maybe, for example, we have this this normal pass, right? That we have here, and so let's just try using that. Then again, this normal pass sort of has the normal direction of each object, and that can be used. And like normals are generally like used to, for example, you can also know normal map in 3D. Like those can be used to like to calculate lighting, like do all of that stuff. Like so if you have a normal map on an object, it will like show the lighting, like a bump map where the lighting actually interacts. So that's the difference between 3D a bump map, which is just a bump, or a normal map where if you also have the light moves around, that you also can get some shadow casting. That's the normal map does, but you can use that stuff in compositing as well. So this is our normal thing, and we need to, in order to use that, we need to first embed it into our channels. So let's again use cello boolean. And let's just put alpha again to do nothing, and all the other stuff you can just leave it as that because it looks the same. Right, so I want to put the normal here in this thing. By the way, let's turn off do nothing, do nothing, do nothing. Right, so put that thing in, and then go to auxiliary channels, enable auxiliary channels. And then if we go to normal, so X normal, we can just put foreground red. Where is it? Foreground. Foreground. Red foreground. Green foreground. And Z normal is going to be blue foreground. So now we're taking this RGB information, we're putting it in the normal channel of our thing. So we should have a normal channel here now. You can see we have X normal, Y normal, and Z normal. And if you're just looking at them like that, they look just like yeah, well, they look just like, if you look at it like this, you can see the colors. But we can use that to use a shader. Shader, there we go. So if you just drag this in here, let's just click on this again. Right, so now by default you can see it looks a little bit weird. So let's turn off ambient and let's turn off diffuse, and let's only do specular, and let's drag a little bit with these sliders. And you can see we get this sort of this white stuff that we were seeing also in the individual elements here, right? So again, just like just turn all of the other stuff off. So and just only put specular. And then what we have here, we have the equator angle. So it's kind of the angle that we're looking at. And the polar height, just play around. It's essentially just where the light is coming from. So let's say we want something like this. So we now rotate, you can see we're sort of emulating light shining on these objects. And the way you would, for example, use this is, just move this stuff over. But if you hold Alt, by the way, you can make these sort of relocation things. But what we could do, for example, is let's do a color corrector. You can also use a brightness contrast. Just drag that in. And then again, we can just use this shader. Is as the effect mask. Go to settings, put it to luminance. We can just say gain, just gain it up. And then if we change our shader here, you can see we get this sort of cool highlight moving along. And then this can already be like cool, like you often see these, like if you have a commercial where you have like this light shining across like a logo or a thing. Like you can do that in 3D, but there's also things that you can later do in composite. And the good thing about doing something like this in composite is because you don't have to deal with super long render times for your 3D. There's a lot of stuff you can just do in composite without re-rendering, which is the entire idea behind compositing. Like to just like take your renders, and your renders are like a 7 out of 10, and you composite them, and then they turn into a 9 out of 10 because you do like very nice looking compositing. So yeah, we can just gain this up, and then we can just do this thing. And again, you can also just do this on like only one object. Like we could grab our puzzle mat here. Let's say we want to do effect mask, and let's say we want to only do it on the blue. And oh, by the way, maybe I shouldn't do that. I should do multiply by mask. All right. So now if I have this thing and I go to light, you can see I can only do it on one object. So you can stack all of these techniques by just like just doing stuff. And again, you also have these things where you can just like all of these nodes have intensities, and you can blend them in. For example, I can only blend them in a little bit, blend them in a lot. So there's a whole host of cool stuff that you can do. And again, like just play around with it. The point I'm just trying to make is like you can really like just use all of these AOVs to do a lot of cool stuff. And again, we could just use this inside of our depth of field again. And then we have our depth of field, by the way, is often a little bit slow to calculate. By the way, let me put it like that and put it like that. All right. And let me just, the blend was off, right? Right, so now you can see it's also doing it here with the depth of field on it. And so I hope you kind of get the point of what I'm trying to get across. So yeah, let's also use some of these other channels that we have. For example, we also have this position channel, and the position channel is going to be super cool. So yeah, let's explore that one. So a cool difference between something like Fusion and After Effects is that Fusion has an actual 3D view that we can do some stuff in, and that's where, for example, this world position pass will come in quite handy. So let's just disconnect this thing again. Let's have a look at this, and let's make it into a 3D image plane. So, by the way, let's maybe do that before we merge any sky in. Maybe let's just drag this whole thing over to the right. So let's just have a look at our thing here and control space, and And by the way, you might have already noticed that if you were looking around, but you have a whole host of 3D tools here. So we're going to use those now. So go to image plane 3D and needs to drag that in. And if we then drag that into the viewport, you can see we get a 3D viewport. And if you hold Alt on your keyboard and then middle mouse, you can drag this around. Now you might notice that the colors here look a little bit weird. It's because the 3D viewport doesn't use the OpencolorIO unless there might be a way to have that work. I don't know why that's not working by default, why there's no LUT for it. A way that I use for that is if you put a gamut node, put gamut, or you can put one of these. Just a regular OpencolorIO should probably also work. So we put OpencolorIO and then can put it to from source, ACCG, output space, output Rec 709, and now we put it into Rec 709. So now we can look at it properly in the viewport. Again, this is just for visualization. We're not gonna render it, but like for some stuff it might just might be good to sort of look at it. Just keep in mind that if you're gonna go out of 3D again, you need to convert it back, or you need to just disable these nodes because else the colors will look weird. So like just keep that in mind. So anyway, now we have this as an image plane. We can just like check that out as a wireframe. Let's really increase these the amount of subdivisions, so we get like a quite high resolution grid. And then you might say, well, in After Effects I also have this stuff. I can also put stuff in 3D. I can move stuff in 3D space, but we cannot. Well, I guess there are plugins to do some of that stuff sort of in After Effects, but it's not as powerful. But let's grab for example our world position paths we have. So our position paths here. Now we need one of those things that we installed, the Redshift tools via Reactor, right? So if I type Redshift RS, and we need the vector flipper because the vectors here are inverted. So we need SRGB. So we just because the positions are just different. So you can say what's the source. So source is Houdini. So now this looks proper. So this is what it should look like. So it should not look like this. And by the way, on your viewport with plus and minus, you can also zoom in and out. Anyway, we can now do on this 3D image plane that we have here. We can say displays 3D. And that will allow us to displace our actual thing. And then we can put this into displace 3D. And you can say, oh, it looks weirdly weird, but you can already see it's displacing it. We want to use the RGB channel, and we want to put it to absolute. All right, and you can see, oh, it's a little bit, we need to zoom out. And let's turn off our image plane. Let's turn off our wireframe. And look at that. I mean, we have our 3D scene. I mean, it looks a little bit weird that way. It's sort of extrude because it's extruding it from a plane. So that's why it looks like that. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool, right? And like for example, you could merge 3D. There are separate merge nodes for 3D stuff. So you could say merge 3D, and you could say I can make a light. For example, I can make a point light. And I need to right click in the viewport, 3D options, and then do lighting and shadows. And then I can, for example, drag my point. I can grab my point light. You can see I can have actual 3D lights on my already rendered scene. So you can see, but let's not do that for now. Just wanted to show that that's possible. Let's get our camera in here because, of course, like, it's all fine, but like how are we gonna sort of match the thing here? Because if you want to just render 3D again, so render 3D will render it back to a 2D thing. You can, like, we don't have any proper camera here. So that's where this other thing comes in. RS camera extractor. This is another thing that you installed via Reactor. So just put that in. So RS camera extractor will take a beauty render. So just grab our render again. Just gonna drag it in again. Whoop. So I'm just gonna, this is gonna extract the camera from the metadata that we have. So our camera extractor here. And then I'm gonna select and go camera 3D. And then we need to select option 6 on the camera 3D, and this will extract. So this will extract it, and this will then be piped into the camera. So then we get a 3D camera, and we can merge 3D. So merge 3D. We can merge 3D this in, and then look through our camera. As you can see, now we're looking through our camera here. And now it's matched. I mean, you still have this sort of weird stuff here going on, and we need to obviously disable this thing. But now it's rendered back. And while we're doing now here, like with the extraction there, that just looks a little bit weird. But we don't like that. Doesn't like what we're going to be using this for. It doesn't matter that much. Because maybe what we want to do is maybe we want to put an object maybe through this torus. So let's say we're going to look at our, let's have a look at our 3D thing here. Let's go right click and do good perspective. And by the way, you can also just mask, like I could also just do this on a specific object. Like for example, what I could do is I could say, where is it? I could say, for example, let's grab one of the other puzzle mats. So I could, before I do this whole thing, I could say Boolean. And then I could say puzzle mats, right click, effect mask, whip. Multiply by the, which color do we want? Let's say, let's do the box or something. Green. Multiply by mask, and we only have the box. Then we get, so then let's do the color thing again. Displays 3D. Get the camera in there. Boop. Render 3D. Boop. And now we only have the box. Let's just remove it again because we do want it on the entire thing. Right. So we do a shape 3D. All right. We have let's enable this thing again. We can, for example, let's say what we want to do is let's do a. Already have a torus, but let's do a sphere or something. Let's merge. We can just merge that in. Let's do perspective, and let's for example put this inside of the torus there. And with Q and W and E, we can. So it's kind of like standard 3D controls. They're different from Houdini, but I mean, so that's why I sometimes press the wrong button. But all right, so you can just move around like this. Let's say we put it into this thing. So we just look at Merge 3D and go to camera. You see, we put it in between here. So you just. So it's inside there. And what we could do is, for example, on this image plane 3D here, we could say, go to the matte drop down and then say is matte. So you can see now it just mats out the 3D stuff that we did from the entire thing. And now if you render this thing, see, we can just get this, sphere. And now we could do is say merge. And we could just merge our little thing in here. And maybe on the render 3D, what we do is enable some lighting, shadows, and we could say we want to add a light in here. Good point lights. So let's just have a look here at the. Let's go to lighting. Go to perspective. You can see now we're just adding this light to it. And I mean, it's a boring blue ball, but for example, what you could also do is you can actually add materials. So let's just add let's say we want to add a material to this thing. So we can actually do type replace material 3D, and we can plug this in between here, and then we can right click, go to add tool, 3D material, and then for example, let's do a fake reflection material. So we can just plug that in, create a render 3D, and let's add maybe like a fake, like an HDRI thing. We need to color correct our HDRI. So if we have an HDRI here, and we should color correct this to aces. Don't think it'll matter that much, but let's just be good about it. So let's go to utility, and then I think linear sRGB to aces, and then let's save. Let's plug this in, right click, and let's plug it into reflection color. And if we just zoom in here in this reflect material, now for example, we can change fall off and do this thing and change the index of refract. It's not doing that much. I don't use the 3D workflow that much here. So I'm not super familiar with some of these materials. I'm just trying to sort of show you what's possible here. What I generally do with compositing, I keep it with 2D compositing. But so I'm not familiar with all of the settings of all of the materials here. But you can see here, we do some pretty cool stuff. So you can merge it in. Could also maybe try like replacing material on the ground. In order to do that, what I probably want to do is I probably don't want to use this extracted thing that we have here. So if I turn off my matte again, image plane, because we have these issues here, that stuff. So probably what we want to do is maybe we want to load in an actual 3D object. So in order to do that, let's dive right back into Houdini and export an alembic for our scene, and we can actually bring that back in. So for here inside of Houdini, we can actually do a good file, export alembic. We can select all of our objects, maybe except for the sun. We don't need the camera. And we can go, and I already exported it as a test before. So let's just go to export, boom. And let's go back in here. Then what we could do is, for example, type alembic mesh 3D. And then we need to go to our project folder. I'm gonna give you some tips as well later to make this referencing a project folder a little bit easier, but we'll do that once we do set up the actual project. So let me go to my scene here. I'm just browsing to it on my second screen. Right, let's go there. And if you just have a look, so you can see here we have the actual alembic we can load in. Maybe, by the way, instead of loading it in like this, because that just loads in the entire thing, maybe what we'll do is load it in with the import menu, and then do it like that. And then we can actually we're gonna get all of them merged in. So it's gonna put it over here, and then we get actual separate objects here. We can sort of move around as well. So might be cool to maybe do some stuff on that. So let's maybe move this to the side. Let's just start working, do some stuff on there. Just trying to show you some techniques before we take this into more production oriented setting. So all right, let's just go in there. So we can keep this thing here. So from the sphere, that's pretty useful. But let's do some other stuff on here. So let's say that maybe we want to let's merge our camera in here. So we have the camera there, and probably we only want to use the ground. All right, that's that one. So let's disconnect maybe all of the other ones. Maybe if you press F2, if you hold something, you can rename it. So let's rename it ground. And let's give it a UV. So if we type UV map 3D, it's going to add a UV map. And we can now add a material to that thing. So let's do a replace material 3D, and then we could add a texture. So if I go to my thing here, so for example, I have a brick texture here. And again, we should probably color convert this. Oh, let's grab the one that we use for the clouds. So then we get proper colors here. And let's make a material. So maybe we want to do is right click here, add tool, 3D material, and go to, let's use a cook tolerance. That one seems to be quite okay. I'm not sure where the name comes from, but seems to be quite a decent material. Again, like I don't use the 3D workflow that often, so it's just I'm going over what I have used so far, and this seems to be pretty okay material. My general compositing is just 2D compositing, but it's like sometimes these 3D tools can be useful. Yeah, let's plug it in. Let's plug that on replace material, and let's check out the 3D thing here. And we need to go on there, and let's put this into a render 3D node. So we can check what it's gonna look like. Let's turn off lighting, shadows, and let's change our UV map. So planar, let's scale it up. So you can see we added some bricks here. UV map, let's make it a little bit bigger. And we can add a normal map, for example. Here we have some normals. We don't need to do anything with aces for that. We can just type normal. No, not that one, just normal. No, it's called bump map here. Bump map. So we can take our normal here, plug it in there, put the normal map to bump map, and then we can put the right click, put it into bump map. And then we should be able to, let's do it again. Let's see, is this is set to bump map. That's correct. Right click, bump map input, replace material. Right, yeah, it seems to work. So you can see now we get a bump map effect on there. We could add a light if you want. It's probably probably not working because we didn't have lighting. Turn on here, lighting, shadows. Let's add a light. No. Light, point light. So you can see we have a bump map. You can see it actually sort of interacting a little bit. I mean, no, it's not the best looking material here, but just trying to make a point. We'll implement a lot of this stuff in more interesting ways later on. All right, so we have this thing. So what we could do is after this render 3D, we could grab our mat. Where do we have it? We have a puzzle mat there. And let's put that in there and then say, all right, let's only render the red part. Boom. All right, then we have this thing here, and let's just merge that back on. Boop. And now we have that stuff, and then let's say we have probably want to grab the GI here, and then say, all right, we have this puzzle mat here, right? And we have this GI here, so let's, and if, by the way, if this all goes a little bit fast, like don't worry, I'm just trying to sort of show you the possibilities here. But we'll put it into a more concrete example later. Right, yeah, so let's grab the GI here, and again, let's multiply it by the red channel. So we're gonna grab that one. And then we have this rendered 3D here, and we could, again, put a channel booleans. And then we could say, add our channel booleans. And then add our GI onto our bricks here. And then we have, right, that's looking a little bit weird. So we have this here. And, oh, that's probably because we want to, ignore the alpha. So sometimes keep forgetting that. So now we can see we have that thing, and we still have our little GI thing there. And I mean, pretty cool. Like we could even, it might be cool to also even try that. You could even like move an object a little bit if you want to. Like you could project, for example, let's say we want to make this box a little bit bigger and rotate it. I mean, I'm just going with the flow here, so it might be cool. So what we could maybe do is then we need to say, right, we have where do we have our box? What's this thing, right? Yeah, here we have the box. Right, so we could say, let's grab, and I know it's getting a little bit messy here, so you should probably organize this a little bit. And again, you can also group stuff to sort of organize them later. So maybe we could say with this part, so we could say group it, so group it, and then say with this thing, so this is going to be the texture ground. All right, so that's texturing the ground part. And again, if you just double click on this, you open it back up again. All right, so we have this box here. F2, say box. And right, so maybe what we can do here is, let's say, merge 3D. Let's grab our camera thing again we have. And we should be able, I think, to, if we Control C, and then if you Control Shift V here, it will create an instance. So now I can get an instance, I can just move it around. So if I now merge this in and check here, we should have our camera, and now it's instance from this camera. So then we don't have to copy and paste it. So that's with Control Shift V. You can create an instance. You can see this green line referencing the other thing. All right, and then maybe what I want to do is we want to say UV project or UV map 3D, and then say camera. So we want to project a UV from a camera, and then we're going to drag our camera here, boop, and we're going to plug it into this thing, and it's going to project a UV from the camera, boop, on our object. And then we could say, for example, replace material, and then I want to replace material of that thing with our box. You can see now we get the material on our box here. So if we were to put a render 3D here, it should look similar to how our box looked, and we need to turn off our lighting. Let's put it to OpenGL render. There's multiple ways of rendering. Software is sometimes a little bit soft. Again, I don't use the 3D workflow too often, so might be benefits to the software renderer. OpenGL has quite a lot of options. It's quite fast, so I guess in this case that's fine. Might want to change it back later. We'll see. Yeah, so now we have this thing, but the cool thing is now, because we have that map there, and let's maybe, all right, so let's say we want to merge that back in. Right, I'm really messing this up a little bit in the terms of how I'm organizing this. I should have organized my setup here a little bit better. So let's right, still a little bit messy, but right, let's just merge. Let's say merge our newly created box back in, for example. So then we have the box here merged back in, nothing that different. But let's say after we do the replace material, we could say transform 3D. And let's scale it up a little bit. And then translate it down a little bit. And let's say rotate it. Now we're rotating the actual box. And I'm scaling it up because, of course, there's still another box there. And also we have to deal with that. But now in this case, I can say, well, all right, I'm just moving this box around. So now I added like I created a, like I mapped my render on my box. I'm transforming my box and I'm doing all this super cool stuff. So I kind of hope that you're sort of starting to see the possibilities, what this can have if you're doing this in a sort of more production environment, I guess. Like you could do particles inside of compositing as well. Like there's a whole particle system which you can use, which I'm not really going to dive into now, but that's stuff you can do, and you can use your like your 3D geometry to actually have particles go behind stuff, in front of stuff. Whole host of cool stuff that you can actually do here. So maybe what you actually want to do still is do a merge 3D, and maybe you want to actually get a Z depth from this thing so we can do the final depth blur thing that we wanted to do. So we need to merge some of our 3D stuff in. So I guess let's merge our new box in here. So that's that thing. Let's merge our, what's this? And you should probably, if you're doing this, you should probably just name your stuff properly, because that's what I'm not necessarily doing now, but I guess. Right, so we have this thing here. So I guess let's merge that thing there. Oh yeah, we probably don't want to do that. All right, let's just do it a little bit different. Let's just grab our alembic. Let's grab our scene that we had. Where is it? It's probably going to be easier to do it that way. So let's just grab an alembic mesh. Let's grab our objects here. So here we have that thing. Then let's merge 3D our stuff there. Let's merge our box in. We need to, yeah, the instance there is not gonna, let's just, we need to grab that one here and then Ctrl-Shift-V. All right, let's put the camera in there. So let's just have a look. Right, so we have a new box, and then we need to merge our, we're gonna merge our, where is it? Our shape in. Oh no, merge it over there. All right, so we get the whole thing there. And then we should be able to do a render 3D. And then get render 3D, and I think we can say we want to output a Z channel as well. So now we should have a Z channel here. So you can see we have Z down here in the bottom. We have depth. All right, so that's looking good. I guess we can then do channel boolean and then say that we want to use Z buffer. Let's put this in Z buffer. Where Z buffer background? Where is it? Z background. there a Z background? Z background, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Let's put it in the other one. Alright, so let's just put it into both the foreground and the background. And let's go here and go to let's do Z buffer foreground and Z buffer foreground. So these are just like I'm putting the Z buffer into the color information of the channels. That's kind of what's happening here. So we have red, we have green, we have blue, and I'm getting the Z and I'm putting it into the color. So we can use it in the color, because in the Friesluft thing, I want it to be not in the Z channel, but I want it to be in the color. So that it's copying that over. And let's turn alpha to do nothing. All right, so now you can see here in the bottom, you can see I have this information. And if I now do brightness contrast, I should be able to extract that information. So that's up the brightness here. You can see brightness, and down the contrast. You can see now I have a depth channel. Let me put the render here to, because you can see there's problems here. So that's again, OpenGL fixes that here. All right, so now we have a new depth pass. And now the thing comes where we can grab the, so we have our render thing here. Just, all right, so we have that thing, the new thing, and then we can say we want to use that here in the beauty, but the depth map that we had there was not correct, because remember our depth map here still had the box small and then doesn't have the orb. And then we have the new depth map here that we made, that one. We can say, all right, put that into the Friesluft auto range again. As you can see, now just the auto range, and now I'm gonna plug this in, and let's put the focus somewhere. All right, let's just remove the focal distance, and let's change the radius a little bit. All right, but you can see now we have a depth map that works with, let's just, by the way, see if our render 3D is actually rendering it as full depth. Let's put it to float 32. I think it was by default, but let's just to be so sure that there's Fusion sometimes will just put stuff as not being float. Just to be sure that we're doing good stuff. You can see, I think here the black and white point changed a little bit. All right, anyway, you can see where we essentially just like we really rebuilt our own our thing. I'm just gonna turn down the depth, and what I could say, I guess, color correct. You can like change the color a little bit, make it a little bit blue or whatever, like do whatever your heart desires. And then I guess add grain, because everybody likes grain. All right, grain, where are you? Film grain. Wow, so cinematic. All right, anyway. So just to recap, what we learned, and again, in the next video, we're really gonna apply this to an actual sort of more production-oriented shot, because this was just experimenting with simple objects and showing you the possibilities of stuff in comp, and that comp is not just color grading and that's it, because that, I think the feeling that a lot of people have I think I kind of feel that some people think that's what comp is, and the comp is an entire, like, and that's why I mentioned at the beginning of the video, like, I am not a full-time compositor. Like, I know a decent amount about compositing. I've composited quite a decent amount, but I kind of hope to show you here that there's a whole world to compositing that you might have not even known that existed if you never composited before. There's actually a lot of other cool stuff that we're gonna do as well in the next video. We're actually gonna be more we're gonna more apply this from the get-go to make just a cool render. So I hope to see you there. I hope you found it interesting. I know it was quite a long video, but yeah, I think this was quite interesting. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you in the next video. By the way, one more thing. I already stopped recording, and then I figured I was doing something else, and I was like, oh damn, I still have to record this part. But like, we also need to know how to sort of save this stuff out. So it kind of depends on your output. I'll get more into that, I guess, later with the next video. But generally, if you're doing 3D for, like, let's say if you're working for a studio, or like in a studio, or like even if you're as a freelancer working like with another studio, generally most stuff will also go through grading. At least like bigger projects, maybe smaller projects you might do some grading yourself, but like bigger stuff will always go through grading. In that case, you will probably just save EXRs out. So they will just be EXRs, and those EXRs, you can be linear EXRs, and then you can just tell the grader that you're working in ACES, and then it should all be fine. So I can just make a saver, and then I guess just make a thing here called EXR, and then call it my render.exr. Then I can just save it out. I can just press render. I need to put just one frame here, and I can save it out. And then there will be one render here. Yeah, it looks a little bit weird here because of the ACES thing, of course, but like a grader will be able to deal with that stuff. If you want to do your own final output, let's say you want to make a video or make whatever, and you're going to put it on like on the internet or whatever, and you want to do a final output, or if you're going to go into, for example, I edit a lot in Premiere, and that just doesn't you cannot really work with ACES in Premiere. There's no proper plugin for it, so you just need to bake your SRGB in there. So in that case, what you would, for example, do is you need to say OpencolorIO. Again, now let's turn off our OpencolorIO here, so it's going to look weird. And we're going to say from ACCG to output Rec 709. So it's kind of the inverse that we're normally doing. So you see, we're going to, like if we check here with ACES or here without ACES, now it's baking it back into sRGB. Now we could say, for example, in our render thing here, we could say JPEG. So let's say we want to write out a JPEG or whatever. My render.jpg, render one frame, render complete. And you can see now I rendered out my beautiful render, my best work ever. As a JPEG, you see the colors will be fine. So now we kept the colors throughout the entire process, and it will be my final output image. Anyway, with that out of the way, now let's take this into an actual sort of project. So more, let's just look at some actual more production techniques, tips and tricks. And like, so actually apply the stuff that we learned here, and also learn some more stuff, but let's apply it to an actual project. And then hopefully when that is all done, you should have a sort of decent, at least sort of base level understanding of like what is possible with compositing. Hopefully that I've then shown you the light on why you would want to actually start compositing your renders. So yeah, let's get into the next video. If you did like this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up. That helps out YouTube algorithm. And if you want to see more of these types of free videos, you can subscribe, and that also helps me out a lot. So let's get the channel up to more subscribers. Even I don't know, like what's the net goal, 20,000 or something. So that would be cool. So yeah, anyway, and again, like if you want to check, like if you want to follow along with the project files that I'm going over with this during these videos, you can do that. You can get the source files on my website with a link in the description. Anyway, now that it's out of the way, let's head over to the next video.